Hayden Locke, President and CEO of Marimaca Copper. We're developing the Marimaca Oxide copper project in Northern Chile. And I think today we're talking a little bit about our continued focus on where we created all the value in the first place, which is exploration.
Well, okay, good to see you getting back to exploration. You're focusing on Mercedes at the moment, so you better tell us, or maybe give us some of the numbers and maybe tell us why.
Yeah, well, I might show you a couple of slides just so everyone can get a bit of context as to what we're looking at. So Mercedes is, if people remember, it's the deposit. Well, it's the new deposit that we discovered directly to the north of Marimaca. I think what was really interesting was always that it had very similar geological features. And what we've done is a road cut. Now, you see the topography is quite steep in there. So we've done the road cut to be able to get in there and create the drill platforms to allow us to drill. But while we were doing it, we exposed the bedrock and we did some channel sampling along those road cuttings. And, these intersections are pretty nice when you compare them back to what we originally had at Marimaca. I mean, 160, nearly 170 metres at about 0.3%, as compared to this. This was the original channel sample from the Marimaca oxide deposit, which is now 240 million tonnes at about 0.5%, and was 150 metres at a bit over 0.3%. So pretty similar. We're currently in building this road, which will be used, again, for platform generation to allow us to drill properly. And if you remember, in 2021, we drilled the Mercedes target, but the drilling was actually way down here in a much flatter zone. So it was right down in the bottom of that map there. So we've now got an area of influence that is extending 700 by 500. If you go down to 100 meters below surface and assume it's pretty well mineralized, those tons can add up very, very quickly.
Okay, so because that's the question, is like, why not keep your powder dry, not spending money, focus on the studies? I say you got quite a few pounds in the ground already, and I guess the market would want to see you kind of go through those economic studies rapido. So why the distraction?
Yeah, well, look, we're still completely focused on taking the project through the definitive feasibility study, through permitting. None of that is changing, but we have an exceptional exploration team who, now that the primary drilling is done at Marimaca, are not fully utilised. And so we're now turning our attention back, as I think I alluded to, that we have this enormous land package. The holding costs are expected to go up over the next couple of years. And so we want to make sure that we're getting in and doing some early work and working out if there's any land that we can drop to reduce our holding costs. But also, as you know, we're going into that phase of boring yet essential DFS, detailed design and engineering, as we go towards this sort of creates a bit of that excitement for our investors, and we hope it delivers some good catalysts in the second half of the year.
Okay, so you got the Mercedes satellite. So you told us how you're getting after that. It gives a sense of the spend or the meters, or how are you going to kind of quantify it?
Well, we haven't really focused on how many meters we're going to drill yet, but I'd say the first pass would be sub $1 million. I mean, we don't need to drill a huge amount. The first pass drilling is really to assess, okay, how big an area could this possibly be? What are we dealing with here? We had an original exploration target there of 30 to 40 million tonnes at 0.4%, which doesn't sound big, but when you consider that it's just an add-on to Marimaca, it's actually quite meaningful. It's an extra couple of years of mine life. It'd be probably 2 or 3 years of mine life at that full 50,000 tonnes of production. This area of influence is more than double the size of what we had previously. So, this starts to become quite significant when you consider it in the context of a mine which we believe will have a reserve life of somewhere between 13 and 14 years, a mine life, if you include the inferred resource, of 15, 16 years. If we had another 5 years of mine life, well, we could potentially go to 60,000 tonnes, or we can go over that 20-year mine life, which makes us just so much more interesting in terms of financing, potentially corporate activity. It's fairly important for us to continue to add value through the drill bit.
Right, and then with regards to like how you build this thing out, a spoken hub, I think people sometimes refer to it as, we go right. Marimaca's where the plant's going to be, but if we can add on these sort of satellite pits, or whatever they are, satellite targets like Mercedes and others, it suddenly becomes quite big. But how far do you need to take each one of these before you can maybe make this? I'm trying to get the balance between the most effective spend and not having to do more work than you need to attract others to come in and build this thing out for you. So how much work needs to be done on Mercedes before you can say, well, actually, maybe let's go and make another discovery elsewhere?
Well, it really depends on the grade that we encounter at Mercedes. And I think the reason I say that is Marimaca, the high grade core of Marimaca is exceptional. And that is the payback period of our CapEx. And that's why this project is just so much better than most of its peers, because we have such a solid high grade first 5 years of our mine plan. If the grade at Mercedes exceeds that, well then, okay, you might want to drill it out and mine that first. Based on what we're seeing today, we're not going to do a huge amount of work. We may not even take it to an inferred resource. What we want to do is get an idea of what the complementary leachable tons are around the deposit and whether or not there are any high grade zones that we might focus on that would logically displace some of our lower grade material later in the mine life. Overall, we're looking for things that will improve the economics of the Marimaca oxide project. So we're not going to drill for drilling's sake.
Right. Okay. Smart. Or blow through your cash reserves either. In terms of some of your partners, you've obviously got a few strategic partners on board. What are their thoughts on this? I know you've got to do it because you're a public company, and I say sort of this boring, relentless phase of going through the economic studies, but does this add anything for them?
Yeah, Mitsubishi has said to us that they're very happy. Mitsubishi Corp, that is, has said to us they're very happy for us to spend money on exploration, but they would prefer their money to be prioritized for the development of the Marimaca oxide deposit, because that is the reason that they invested. But obviously, for a company like them, they're very interested to see what, if any, exploration potential there is in our ground that could add to that story. And I think also they recognise the quality of Sergio Rivera, our geologist, who is exceptional at creating value through exploration.
Right. And at what point does Mitsubishi, start to lean in and say, right, okay, I think we'll take it from here, boys? Do they need you to get this thing into production? I'm just trying to remind people new to the story. Do they need for you to kind of go through to the point where FID, or what's the relationship there again?
So they have a technical and environmental committee position. They're really our partner, so they have information rights. But I think bear in mind that Mitsubishi is a large non-operated investor in the copper industry in Chile, so they don't have any project development or direct project operational experience. So they are backing us as a management team to take this project into production, and they would like to be a significant minority shareholder in that project as we go to development. So their strategy is aligned with ours, which is to create a new copper company in the shortest possible time frame.
Right. Okay. And just again, I know you've been clear about what you're trying to do here with this. Do you think? Copper's kind of come off from $5 down to $4.40 again, which is still great compared to 6 months ago. No one's complaining. But do you think that things like exploration success will, have the desired effect for you?
The answer is we don't know, but we continue to want to give people a reason to buy our shares and continue to invest, but also create value for ourselves as shareholders. And we think we have an amazing exploration team. We do have enough money to complete all of the work streams that we have and do some early exploration work. So we do believe that this is a good use of our money on a risk-adjusted basis, and so that's the reason we're spending those dollars. In fact, doing the road cuts is relatively cheap compared to drilling. Gives us quite a lot of geological information, and we're also doing exploration work on our other projects as well. So, I think it is value added for our shareholders, and hopefully attracts new investors to come in. Copper price down a little bit, but I think the long-term thematics are very much intact, and people want to see resource growth, and that's still a weakness of our project, if there is one, is that we're just not tier 1 scale yet, but if we continue with success and exploration, we could become that.
Right. And so again, reminding people of some of the moving parts and some of the things that are going on at the moment. You've got Asenco involved at the moment, obviously, quality outfit, and I think it's important. I think that's important. We've seen a couple of kind of companies blow up even at build stage, and as recently as Friday, I think it was. So getting this right and getting the studies done properly by a proper group is important to you. How are they getting on at the moment? Still on schedule?
Well, we're actually doing the permitting first. So we're largely on schedule with the permitting. There might be a little bit of slippage there, but it's not going to be more than a couple of weeks. So still middle of the year to submit our permit application. We haven't officially started the engineering for the definitive feasibility study, but no reason
When do you officially start?
Well, as soon as we're finished the DIA, the permit engineering, really, because we've got the same team doing both phases of engineering, and so they can't do one without completing the other. And the reason we chose that is because there needs to be coherence between the two things that we're submitting. Obviously, what we submit as our application has to be reflective of what we're actually taking to the definitive feasibility study.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I think we leave it there. That's the news, folks. Expect some drilling. And hopefully adding to the pounds in the ground. And what would you sort of point your investors to in terms of the next 6 months?
Well, so we're a big focus on exploration. Obviously, the big timelines for us for the Marimaca Oxide project is submitting the permit application and then delivering the definitive feasibility study and really confirming what we always have thought about this project, which is its industry-leading capital cost of production, and then with its very strong operating costs, it'll be exceptional return on invested capital, a very financeable project for a group like us. We continue to have discussions with groups about our next phase of financing, which is really taking us through next year. And then obviously the big one for me, which is the catalyst for new investors, is the exploration story. I think there'll be some big news coming out, not just on the Mercedes project, but on our other project in the future. And I'm pretty excited about eventually being able to release some of that information to the market.
Brilliant. Okay, nice quickie there. And I'm just going to finish off one kind of big macro question. I mean, the mood is good for copper. I think it's obviously price has sort of settled back down around 440, as I said earlier. But great expectations from every conversation that I have with fund managers. Not too many players in the market, certainly in terms of advanced stage. What do you feel the mood is? You've just come back from a conference. What are people asking? What are they concerned about?
I think everybody is asking about what's happened with the copper price coming back down from all-time highs. And my response is, it felt like, I think I mentioned last time we spoke that it felt like it was a bit of an artificial squeezing of supply. What's interesting is China was stockpiling copper, but they have started to reduce those stockpiles. One of the things I presented at the conference today was just the scale of transmission investment, particularly by China, but also the rest of the world, is, I think, going to be the big driver of demand for copper over the next 5 to 10 years. And so really this is an infrastructure-led demand boom. But I think the key difference to the last infrastructure-led demand boom, which was really urbanization and infrastructure-led in China, is this is a global phenomenon. We're not talking about one jurisdiction. We're talking about every jurisdiction, every developed jurisdiction in tandem. And that is going to create a wave of demand if we're going to come close to achieving any of these, these electrification goals. A lot more copper is going to be demanded. And the only way it's going to be supplied is if the price goes up.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting. I'm reading about it every day, and it seems that the numbers seem a lot more firm, a lot more assured in terms of that kind of demand coming down the line. Numbers which are a bit less certain for me seems to be around supply and which companies are going to be able to get into production, which companies are dropping off, and how long it's going to take some of these new entrants to actually get into market. All quite good news for copper price moving forward. And I guess for companies like yourself, when it comes to the point where you're raising capital in that kind of environment. Hayden, appreciate time today. I know you've had a long one at this conference and you've come home just to talk to me. So appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.